7 Stoic lessons that will change your life. If you could master just 7 lessons, your entire life would transform. Imagine standing in the middle of chaos, yet feeling calm as though you were anchored to the ground. Imagine walking into a storm of fear, and instead of trembling, you meet it with courage. Imagine confusion swirling all around you, but inside, clarity rises like the sun. These are not fantasies, they are the promises of a way of thinking that has endured for thousands of years. The way of the Stoics. What if peace was not about what happens to you, but about how you respond? What if freedom had nothing to do with wealth or status, and everything to do with mastering your own mind? These are the kinds of questions the Stoics asked themselves daily, and their answers changed the way they lived, loved, fought, and died. The Stoics were emperors and slaves, generals and merchants, philosophers and ordinary citizens. And yet, despite the vast differences in their lives, they all carried a similar strength, the unshakable power of a disciplined mind. You see, most people today live in reaction. A harsh word is spoken and they flare up in anger. An unexpected problem arrives and they collapse in despair. They chase after comforts and luxuries, and when those things slip from their hands, they are left empty. The Stoics knew a better way. They believed that life was short, unpredictable, and often harsh, but also that it was full of meaning if you could approach it with wisdom. They believed you could not always control what happened, but you could always control who you chose to be in the face of it. That is why Stoicism is not just an ancient philosophy, it is a practical guide to life. When the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius sat down to write his private notes, he wasn't writing for fame or fortune. He was reminding himself how to be strong, how to stay virtuous, how to hold his mind steady even as the world shook around him. When Seneca wrote letters to his friends, he didn't fill them with lofty theories. He offered advice for enduring exile, handling grief, and facing death. And when Epictetus, a man born into slavery, taught his students, he gave them the key to freedom. The realization that no one could truly enslave a person who mastered their own mind. So today we stand where they once stood, facing struggles of our own. The forms may have changed, traffic jams instead of chariots, digital screens instead of scrolls, global markets instead of Roman forums, but the struggles of the heart remain the same. We fear loss, we crave approval, we battle anxiety. And yet, just as Stoicism gave strength to those who came before us, it can give strength to us today. In this journey, we will explore 7 Stoic lessons that can change your life forever. They are not complicated, but they are powerful. They will challenge you to see the world differently, to face hardship differently, and to live differently. They are lessons that have carried men and women through war, exile, poverty, fame, and fortune. And if you let them, they can carry you too. By the end of this, you will see that you don't need to change the world to live a transformed life. You only need to change how you walk through it. The Stoics left us a map, and today we begin to follow it. Stoicism began in Athens around 300 BC in a place called the Stoa Poikile, the painted porch. Zeno of Citium, the founder, taught that philosophy wasn't just for the classroom, it was for life. His students weren't meant to merely debate theories, but to practice a way of living that would keep them steady through every storm. Over centuries, Stoicism spread from Greece to Rome, and it took root in the hearts of men who shaped history. Some wore crowns, like Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king who ruled an empire. Some wore chains, like Epictetus, a slave who discovered freedom within himself. And others, like Seneca, wrestled with power, wealth, and politics, all while urging their friends to hold fast to simplicity and virtue. Why does this matter now, 2,000 years later? Because though the world has transformed, human nature has not. We still fear death. We still suffer heartbreak. We still battle anger, envy, greed, and anxiety. We still get lost chasing status and possessions, imagining that if we just had a little more, we would finally be satisfied. Technology has advanced, but our hearts remain restless. What Stoicism offered then, it still offers now, a compass pointing us back to what really matters. Think about our modern struggles. A student fears failing an exam, feeling as though one grade will define their worth. A parent lies awake at night, worried about the future of their children. A professional drowns under the weight of endless deadlines and emails, convinced that peace will only come when they finally catch up. Social media tells us we are never enough. We don't have enough. We don't do enough. We don't look good enough. It's no wonder anxiety and depression have become so common. We are pulled in every direction, but rarely inward, where true strength is found. The Stoics remind us that peace is possible, not by changing the world, but by changing ourselves. They remind us that wisdom doesn't belong to the past alone. Imagine Marcus Aurelius sitting in his tent at the edge of a battlefield, writing to himself that the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. Imagine Epictetus, who had been beaten and broken as a slave, teaching his students that no man is free until he learns to master himself. Imagine Seneca writing from exile, explaining that wealth means little if you haven't learned to live with simplicity. These words could have been written yesterday because they speak directly to the human condition, which has never changed. Stoicism is not a philosophy of retreat, nor is it a philosophy of cold indifference. It is about engagement with life. It is about acting with virtue, with justice, with courage, even when life seems unfair. It is about finding calm in the storm, clarity in confusion, and strength in suffering. It tells us that the things most people spend their lives chasing, fame, riches, power, are not true goods. The true good lies in the character you build, the wisdom you practice, the justice you uphold, the courage you display, and the self-control you develop. These are things no one can take from you. And so here we are, standing on the shoulders of giants. We live in an age of noise, but Stoicism teaches us silence. We live in an age of distraction, but Stoicism teaches us focus. We live in an age of comfort, but Stoicism teaches us strength. It has endured because it works. It does not promise that life will be free of pain. It does not promise riches or luxury. What it promises is something far greater: the ability to walk through life with steady feet and an unshaken heart. This is why Stoicism matters today, perhaps more than ever. In a time when many feel lost, Stoicism offers direction. In a time when many feel powerless, Stoicism reminds us of the control we do have. In a time when many chase shadows, Stoicism turns our eyes back to the light of what is real and enduring. Now, with this foundation laid, let us turn to the 7 lessons, practical, timeless, and transformative, that can reshape your life, just as they reshaped the lives of those who came before us. The first lesson, and perhaps the foundation of all Stoic wisdom, is the principle of control. Epictetus, the once enslaved philosopher, put it in the simplest possible terms. Some things are within our control, and others are not. To forget this is to invite misery. To remember it is to unlock peace. Every day we confuse the two. We wake up, look at the weather, and grow frustrated that it rains. We apply for a job and torment ourselves while waiting for the answer. We argue with a loved one and replay their words in our minds 100 times, hoping we could make them change. But the rain does not bend to our will. The decision of the employer lies outside our grasp, and another person's heart is never fully ours to command. When we spend our energy wishing to control what cannot be controlled, we exhaust ourselves against walls that will never move. The Stoics taught that freedom is found in turning our attention back to what truly belongs to us: our thoughts, our choices, our actions. These are ours and ours alone. A sailor cannot change the direction of the wind, but he can choose how to steer his ship. A general cannot prevent the coming of war, but he can decide whether he will lead with courage or with cruelty. A student cannot force an exam to be easy, but he can prepare diligently, face the test calmly, and accept the outcome with grace. This is not a call to passivity. It does not mean you should sit idly by while life happens. On the contrary, it means focusing your effort where it matters most. Instead of wasting time on outcomes you cannot dictate, invest your strength in the choices that are in your hands. If you are sick, you may not control the illness, but you can control your attitude toward it. If you lose your job, you may not control the economy, but you can control how you rise to meet the challenge. If someone insults you, you cannot control their words, but you can control whether you let those words wound you or not. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself constantly, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Think of the countless moments of life where this lesson could have spared you suffering. How many nights have been lost to worrying about tomorrow? How many relationships strained because you wanted another person to behave differently? How many opportunities missed because fear of outcomes paralyzed you? The Stoics invite us to step off that treadmill, to recognize that we are responsible for effort, not for results, for virtue, not for victory. Try this simple practice. At the start of the day, take a sheet of paper and draw 2 columns. In the first, write the things you know you cannot control today: the weather, the moods of others, the outcomes of uncertain events. In the second, write what you can control: your choices, your words, your effort, your perspective. Then, throughout the day, when you feel your heart tugged by frustration, return to the list. Ask yourself, which column does this belong to? If it belongs to the first, release it. If it belongs to the second, take action. When you live this way, you stop being a prisoner of circumstances. You stop being tossed around like a leaf in the wind. You become like the sailor who knows storms may come, but who never loses control of the tiller. You may not command the sea, but you command yourself. And in that, you discover a power greater than any external force, the power of a steady, disciplined mind. This lesson alone can change the course of your life. For when you no longer demand the world to obey you, you begin to master yourself. And mastery of the self is the first step toward freedom, the first step toward peace, and the first step toward living as the Stoics lived, calm, unshaken, and unbroken, no matter what storms arrive. The second lesson that can transform your life is the way you see hardship. The Stoics never promised a life free from suffering. They did not tell themselves that pain, loss, or failure could be avoided if they were clever enough or wealthy enough. They knew better. They accepted that hardship is a natural part of existence, as natural as the change of seasons. But they also believed that adversity could be more than just endured. It could be used. It could be transformed into strength, wisdom, and even virtue. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself during some of Rome's darkest times, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." These words are more than poetry. They are a blueprint for resilience. To a Stoic, every obstacle is an opportunity, every setback a chance to train the soul. If life blocks one path, it is showing you another. If life takes something away, it is giving you the chance to discover what you can live without. Think about the most difficult moments of your life. Perhaps it was the loss of someone you loved, the collapse of a dream, or the betrayal of a friend. At the time it felt unbearable, but look at who you became because of it. Perhaps you found strength you did not know you had. Perhaps you discovered compassion for others who suffer. Perhaps you learned patience, humility, or courage. The lesson of the Stoics is not that suffering is good, but that suffering can be useful if you choose to make it so. Epictetus, who knew pain intimately, taught his students not to run from hardship, but to meet it with a different question. Most people ask in their suffering, "Why me?" The Stoic asks instead, "What can I learn from this? How can this shape me into someone better?" In this shift, the wound becomes a teacher, and the trial becomes a trainer. A person who meets difficulty in this way does not break. They bend, they grow, they rise. In our modern world, it is easy to see hardship as unfair. We compare ourselves to others who seem to have it easier, forgetting that appearances are illusions. Everyone suffers. The only difference is how they choose to respond. Some collapse, some grow bitter, some numb themselves with distractions. But those who live by Stoic principles rise above their trials. They see their pain as raw material, like marble in the hands of a sculptor. The chisel hurts, but it reveals the form within. To apply this in your life, practice reframing adversity. When you face a challenge, pause and ask, what hidden benefit might this contain? What skill is this moment asking me to develop? If you lose your job, it may teach resilience, adaptability, or humility. If you fall ill, it may teach gratitude for health and compassion for those who suffer. If you fail at a project, it may teach persistence, creativity, or the courage to try again. This doesn't mean pretending that pain feels good. It doesn't mean denying the reality of loss or sorrow. Stoics grieved, they cried, they felt the sting of life just as we do. But they refused to let those feelings become wasted. They used them. They let their hardships forge them into something stronger. Picture steel in the fire. Without the heat, it cannot be tempered. Without the hammer, it cannot be shaped. In the same way, your soul requires trials to become strong. Without them, it remains soft and untested. With them, it becomes resilient, courageous, and wise. This lesson is not about running towards suffering, but about no longer fearing it. For once you learn to see hardship as a teacher, it loses much of its power to terrify you. You stop asking whether life is fair, and you start asking how you can rise. And in that rising, you discover what the Stoics discovered long ago, that the things meant to break you can, if you let them, become the very things that build you. The third lesson the Stoics practiced is one that surprises many people today: voluntary discomfort. They did not always seek to live surrounded by luxury, safety, or ease. Instead, they deliberately chose moments of hardship even when life was comfortable. They wore coarse clothing, ate the simplest food, or slept on hard ground. They wanted to prove to themselves that happiness was not tied to possessions or circumstances. Seneca once wrote to his friend Lucilius, urging him to set aside certain days for this exercise. On those days, he told him to live with the cheapest fare, the roughest clothing, and then ask himself, "Is this the condition I so feared?" The purpose was not to glorify suffering, but to break the chains of fear. Most people are enslaved not by poverty itself, but by the fear of poverty. Most are enslaved not by hunger itself, but by the terror of what it might mean. By practicing discomfort, the Stoics stripped fear of its power. Think of how often our modern lives are ruled by the pursuit of comfort. We avoid silence, so we surround ourselves with endless noise. We avoid hunger, so we overeat and overindulge. We avoid boredom, so we scroll endlessly on glowing screens. Yet the more we cling to comfort, the weaker we become. When adversity does arrive, and it always does, we are unprepared. The Stoics chose another path. They trained themselves to endure with little so that when life took much, they could still stand. Voluntary discomfort today might look different than in the ancient world, but the principle remains the same. It could mean fasting for a day, turning off all technology and embracing silence, walking instead of driving, or sleeping without your usual luxuries. It could mean stepping into the cold, speaking honestly when silence would be easier, or living a week without spending money on non-essentials. Each practice reminds you of two things. First, that you can survive with far less than you imagined, and second, that freedom is not found in abundance, but in independence from it. When you discover that you can endure discomfort, you lose the fear of losing what you have. You realize that comfort is pleasant, but not necessary. You realize that wealth is useful, but not essential. You realize that health, food, and even companionship may be taken from you, but dignity, courage, and virtue are always within your control. This realization changes the way you live. It makes you bold in the face of uncertainty, calm in the face of loss, and grateful in the face of abundance. Imagine a person who fears nothing because they have practiced letting go. Imagine a person who can enjoy a feast but does not despair when the table is empty. Imagine a person who is content with little, who does not need to cling desperately to more. That is the kind of person the Stoics sought to become. And that is the kind of person you can become if you learn to practice voluntary discomfort. In the end, this lesson is not about rejecting the pleasures of life, but about refusing to be owned by them. It is not about denying comfort, but about proving to yourself that your happiness does not depend on it. When you can do this, you walk with a freedom most people never know. The freedom of knowing that no matter what life takes from you, your peace cannot be stolen. The fourth lesson the Stoics embraced is one that many shy away from: memento mori, remember that you will die. To some, this sounds morbid, a shadow too dark to face. But for the Stoics, it was not a source of despair. It was a source of clarity, urgency, and even joy. By reflecting on death, they learned to live more fully. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself in his private writings, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." For him, death was not a distant possibility, but a present reality. As Emperor of Rome, he had power beyond measure, yet he never forgot that his time was finite. His reminder was not meant to frighten himself, but to sharpen his focus on what truly mattered. If every day could be your last, then every day should be lived with intention. Seneca echoed the same truth when he wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." He saw death not as the thief of life, but as the mirror that shows us how much time we squander on trivialities. We delay our dreams, postpone our virtues, and live as if tomorrow is guaranteed. But the Stoics knew that tomorrow is a gift, not a promise. To remember death is to remember to use today wisely. Consider how most people live. They chase possessions, they argue over petty matters, they seek approval from strangers, all while ignoring the reality that their time is slipping away. We often live as though life is endless, only to be startled when loss or sickness confronts us with the truth. The Stoics chose to confront that truth daily. They carried death as a silent companion, not to cast gloom over their days, but to illuminate them with purpose. When you remember that you will die, you stop wasting time. The insult you received no longer matters. It is too small to take with you to the grave. The wealth you hoard loses its grip because you know it cannot follow you beyond the final breath. The approval of others grows meaningless, for every person who praises you will also one day be gone. What remains is only this: the life you live, the virtue you practice, the love you give, and the wisdom you cultivate. This lesson can be practiced in simple ways. Each morning, remind yourself that today could be your last, not in fear, but in gratitude. Let it guide your actions. If this were your final day, would you spend it in bitterness, in distraction, or in regret? Or would you spend it in courage, in kindness, in presence? At night, reflect on the day as if it were your last chance to examine your soul. Did you live as you wished to be remembered? Did you waste time, or did you honor the gift of life? To meditate on death is to meditate on life itself. It is to see every sunrise as a miracle, every conversation as a treasure, every act of virtue as a legacy. It is to live not in fear of the end, but in freedom from the illusion of endless time. Death is not an enemy, it is a teacher. It reminds us that life is precious, that time is short, and that every choice matters. When you carry this truth with you, you no longer drift aimlessly. You live with clarity, urgency, and depth. And when your final hour comes, you will not be caught unprepared, for you will have lived fully, wisely, and without regret. This is the power of memento mori. It does not lead you to despair, it leads you to life. The fifth lesson of Stoicism is often misunderstood. People think Stoics sought to kill their emotions, to become stone-faced and unfeeling. But this is not true. The Stoics did not aim to suppress emotion, they aimed to master it. They recognized that emotions are natural, but they believed we should decide what to do with them instead of being carried away by them. To be ruled by anger, fear, or desire is to live as a slave to impulse. To master these emotions is to live as a free and rational human being. Epictetus told his students that when someone insults you, it is not their words that hurt you, but the judgment you place on them. The words themselves are just sound. It is your interpretation. This is offensive. This is an attack. This is unbearable, that creates the wound. In the same way, fear is not born from events themselves, but from how we imagine them. A storm at sea is just wind and water. One sailor trembles with terror, another calmly adjusts the sails. The difference is not in the storm, but in the soul. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself to pause before reacting. When anger rose, he asked, "Will this matter in a month? In a year? In 10 years?" Most of the time, the answer was no. He understood that unchecked anger destroys relationships and clouds judgment. He understood that desire, if left ungoverned, leads to greed, envy, and endless dissatisfaction. He understood that fear can paralyze, making us live half-lives, never daring, never trying. To master emotions is not to erase them, but to guide them wisely, like a rider guiding a spirited horse. How do we practice this mastery in daily life? The Stoics taught several techniques. One is the pause. When emotion rises, do not act immediately. Count, breathe, wait. Often the fire fades with time. Another is reframing. Instead of seeing an event as a disaster, ask what opportunity lies within it. A delayed train is not an outrage. It is a chance to read, to reflect, to rest. A harsh word from a friend is not proof of betrayal. It is a chance to practice patience and forgiveness. Another practice is perspective. Imagine you are someone else, someone wiser, calmer, more patient. How would they see this moment? What would they choose to do? By stepping outside your immediate impulse, you give yourself room to act with reason instead of reaction. Modern life offers endless chances to apply this. Social media can ignite envy and anger with a single glance. Traffic can boil into rage at a stranger. Work can crush us with stress, leading us to lash out at those we love. In all these moments, Stoicism calls us back to mastery. You cannot stop emotions from arising, but you can choose what happens next. Think of the power in that. If you can face insults without rage, you become untouchable. If you can face fear without paralysis, you become unstoppable. If you can face desire without slavery, you become unshakable. This is not coldness, this is freedom. The Stoics loved, they grieved, they laughed, they felt joy. But their emotions did not own them. They did not let sorrow drown them, or desire consume them, or anger rule them. They kept their minds clear, their hearts steady, and their actions guided by virtue. That is the kind of mastery they invite you to seek. For when you master your emotions, you do not live as their prisoner. You live as their master, free to act with wisdom, courage, and justice, no matter what comes. The sixth lesson of Stoicism is to live according to virtue, not according to popular opinion. For the Stoics, virtue was the highest good, the foundation of a meaningful life. They believed that external things, wealth, fame, pleasure, even health, were indifferent in comparison to the state of one's character. What mattered above all was whether you lived with wisdom, justice, courage, and moderation. If your life aligned with these virtues, you lived well, no matter what the crowd thought of you. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." Simple words, but they cut through the noise of society. In Rome, as in our own time, people were driven by the desire for approval. They wanted to be praised, to be remembered, to be seen as powerful or important. But Marcus reminded himself daily that the opinions of others are fleeting. The applause of the crowd fades, the gossip of neighbors dies away, and the monuments built in your honor eventually crumble. What endures is only the soul and the choices it made. Seneca also warned against living for the approval of others. He noted how many men exhaust themselves chasing glory or riches, only to discover that neither brings peace. He argued that true happiness is found not in being praised, but in being worthy of praise. To live rightly, even if unnoticed by the world, is far better than to be celebrated for living wrongly. In our age of social media, this lesson has never been more relevant. We are surrounded by voices urging us to measure our worth in likes, followers, or trends. We are pressured to conform, to avoid offending, to say what is popular instead of what is true. But the Stoic path is different. It asks us to stand firm in virtue, even if the crowd jeers. It asks us to act with justice, even if no one applauds. It asks us to speak truth, even if it costs us approval. Living by virtue requires courage. It is easier to bend to the opinion of the majority. It is easier to tell a flattering lie than an uncomfortable truth. It is easier to remain silent when injustice is done than to risk standing against it. But the Stoics believed that ease is not the measure of goodness. Virtue is. To act with justice when it is hard, to remain moderate when tempted by excess, to show courage when afraid, to pursue wisdom when ignorance is simpler. These are the choices that shape a noble life. Ask yourself how often your decisions are driven by fear of others' opinions. Do you speak differently depending on who is in the room? Do you hesitate to do what is right because you fear ridicule? Do you silence your convictions to keep peace with the crowd? The Stoics would say, let go of this slavery. The crowd is fickle, and its praise is shallow. Build your life not on shifting sands, but on the solid ground of virtue. Practical application begins with questions. Before you act, ask, does this align with wisdom? Does it align with justice? Does it require courage? Does it reflect moderation? If the answer is yes, then act, regardless of what others may think. If the answer is no, then do not act, regardless of how tempting or popular it may be. In this way, your compass is always steady, pointing not to the approval of others, but to the good itself. Living by virtue may not win you applause, it may not make you rich, it may even cost you friends or status, but it will give you something greater: self-respect, peace of mind, and a life that stands firm even when the world shakes. For in the end, the opinions of others vanish, but virtue remains. And when your days are done, it will not matter how loudly the crowd cheered, but how faithfully you lived according to what was right. This is the Stoic way: to let virtue, not popular opinion, be the measure of your life. The seventh lesson of Stoicism is to focus on the present moment. The Stoics understood that life is never lived in the past or the future, but always in the now. Marcus Aurelius urged himself again and again: confine yourself to the present. He knew that regret over the past and anxiety about the future were traps of the mind, stealing away the only thing we truly possess, the moment in front of us. Think about how much time is lost in dwelling on what cannot be changed. We replay conversations in our heads, tormenting ourselves with what we should have said. We revisit failures, imagining how life might have been different if only we had chosen another path. But the past is sealed, beyond our reach. No amount of anguish can alter it. Likewise, we spend endless hours fearing the future. We imagine disasters that never come, rehearse failures that never happen, and fill our days with dread about what tomorrow may bring. Yet the future is not here, and when it does arrive, it comes only as another present moment. The Stoics taught that to live well, you must anchor yourself in what is here and now. This moment is where your power lies. You cannot act yesterday, you cannot act tomorrow, you can only act today. And so they trained themselves to return to the present, to focus their thoughts, words, and deeds on what was before them. Consider how this applies to modern life. We live in an age of constant distraction, where our minds are pulled away from the present by screens, notifications, and endless noise. Rarely do we give our full attention to a single task, a single conversation, or even a single breath. Our minds are scattered, and so our lives feel fragmented. But when we reclaim the present, we reclaim our power. To be fully engaged in what you are doing, to listen without distraction, to work without wandering, to savor without rushing, is to experience life in its fullness. The Stoics also knew that much of our suffering comes from resisting the present. We wish things were other than they are, and so we fight against reality. But Marcus Aurelius reminded himself to accept the things to which fate binds you. This does not mean resignation to injustice or passivity in the face of wrong. It means recognizing that the present is real, and to deny it is to waste your energy. Once you accept reality as it is, you can choose how to respond with wisdom and courage. Practical exercises can help cultivate this presence. Begin with something as simple as your breath. Notice it. Follow it. Each breath ties you to this moment, grounding you in the now. When your mind drifts to regrets or fears, gently return to the present. Another exercise is single tasking. Whatever you do, reading, writing, speaking, do only that. Give it your full attention. You will find that not only do you do it better, but you also experience more peace. Gratitude is another path to presence. At any moment, pause and notice something around you to be thankful for: the air you breathe, the warmth of the sun, the voice of a friend. Gratitude pulls you out of the fog of past and future, placing you firmly in the richness of now. To focus on the present is not to ignore the past or neglect the future. It is to place them in their proper place. The past is a teacher, the future a horizon, but the present is life itself. Only here can you act, only here can you live, only here can you become the person you wish to be. When you live in the present, you do not waste your days in regret or fear. You meet each moment with clarity, courage, and calm. And when all those moments are gathered together, they form a life well lived. This was the Stoic vision, to rise each morning determined to live today as if it were the only day you had. For in truth, it is. The past is gone, the future is uncertain, but the present is always here, waiting for you to live it fully. When you look back at the 7 lessons, you begin to see how they form not just individual teachings, but a way of life. They are not random fragments, but a complete philosophy meant to guide a person through every circumstance, whether joy or sorrow, gain or loss, life or death. Together, they create a framework for freedom, peace, and strength. The first lesson teaches you to control what is yours and release what is not. This is the foundation. Without it, you spend your life trying to command the uncontrollable, wasting energy on illusions. With it, you stand steady, anchored to what is truly within your grasp, your thoughts, your choices, your actions. The second lesson transforms hardship into a teacher. It reminds you that obstacles are not the end of the road, but the raw material of growth. When you stop fighting against adversity and instead ask what it can teach you, you stop being broken by life and start being built by it. The third lesson calls you to practice voluntary discomfort. By stripping away luxuries, even for a short while, you learn that happiness is not tied to possessions. You discover that fear of loss is worse than loss itself, and that by training yourself to live with less, you become free to live with more courage. The fourth lesson, memento mori, gives you clarity. By remembering that your days are numbered, you sharpen your focus on what matters most. Death becomes not a shadow to fear, but a compass pointing toward virtue, love, and presence. The fifth lesson shows you the power of mastering your emotions. It reminds you that feelings are not your enemies, but neither should they be your masters. To respond with reason instead of reaction is to claim true freedom, to live not as a puppet pulled by impulse, but as a person guided by wisdom. The sixth lesson demands that you live according to virtue, not the opinion of the crowd. It calls you to stand firm when others waver, to choose justice over popularity, truth over comfort, courage over fear. In a world chasing approval, it teaches you the rare strength of integrity. And the seventh lesson centers it all in the present moment. It reminds you that life is not lived yesterday or tomorrow, but today. Regret cannot change the past. Fear cannot control the future. But wisdom can shape this moment. To live in the present is to live fully, awake, and unshaken. When woven together, these lessons form the Stoic way of life. They teach you that peace does not come from changing the world, but from changing yourself. They remind you that true wealth is not measured in possessions, but in character. They show you that freedom is not found in escape from hardship, but in facing it with courage. And perhaps most importantly, they prove that philosophy is not just a set of ideas to admire, but a discipline to live. Stoicism is not meant for the library alone. It is meant for the marketplace, the battlefield, the home, the quiet moments of reflection, and the stormy moments of struggle. It is meant for you, here and now. To bring these lessons together in your life, start small. Choose one practice, perhaps writing down what is and is not in your control, or pausing before reacting to anger, or reflecting on mortality each morning. As you practice, you will find the lessons interlock. Mastering one makes the others easier. Living them all creates a harmony of mind and soul. This is the Stoic promise. Not that you will avoid pain, but that you will not be broken by it. Not that you will be loved by all, but that you will live with honor. Not that life will be easy, but that you will be strong. The Stoic way of life is not an escape from reality. It is the deepest engagement with reality, guided by wisdom, courage, justice, and moderation. And when you live this way, you discover that nothing can truly shake you because you have built your life upon the unshakable foundation of virtue. Stoicism has never been about lofty theories or abstract arguments. It has always been about life, about how you rise from bed in the morning, how you treat others, how you face loss, how you hold yourself in the midst of storms. The Stoics understood that wisdom is nothing if it is not practiced. To read their words is powerful, but to live by them is transformative. Think of the men who carried these lessons before you. Marcus Aurelius, who bore the weight of an empire and yet returned each night to his journal, reminding himself to be humble, to be just, to remain calm. Epictetus, once a slave, who discovered a freedom deeper than any chains could bind. Seneca, wealthy and powerful, who still urged simplicity and warned against wasting the one thing more precious than gold: time. They lived in different worlds, with different struggles, but the same philosophy guided them all, and it can guide you. You are not an emperor. You may not be a philosopher in a painted porch. You may not have written letters that last for centuries, but you face your own battles, deadlines, heartbreak, fear, temptation, disappointment, and uncertainty. The Stoic path is not reserved for the ancient or the powerful. It is for every person who seeks to live with steadiness, courage, and peace. It is for you today. The invitation of Stoicism is simple but demanding. Control what is yours. Let go of what is not. See hardship not as a curse, but as a teacher. Practice living with less, so you are never enslaved by fear of loss. Remember that you will die, so you may truly live. Master your emotions, so they serve you instead of ruling you. Live according to virtue, even when the crowd turns another way. And live in the present moment, where life is always waiting. Ask yourself now, which of these lessons will you begin to practice today? Will you pause the next time anger rises, choosing patience instead? Will you look at a hardship in your life and ask, what is this teaching me? Will you set aside a day to live simply, to prove to yourself how little you actually need? Will you remind yourself that this day could be your last, and therefore not waste it in regret or distraction? The choice is yours, and that is the most Stoic truth of all. You may not control the storms that come, but you can always choose how you walk through them. You may not decide when your life ends, but you can decide how you live until it does. That decision, repeated each day, will shape you into someone unshaken, unbroken, and free. So let the lessons of the Stoics live on in you. Let them guide your steps, sharpen your courage, and calm your heart. Do not wait for tomorrow is never promised. Begin today. Begin now. For as Marcus Aurelius wrote, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. And in that strength, you will discover a life truly changed.